about, right? Yes. I thought, oh no, I just said it took like yesterday, and most of it worked like it's happens.
That's why they just switched warm seat when we did a master. Yeah, getting ready for the grave. Yeah. That's been tested well.
No, that was since the acquisition is effective miles better.
You think otherwise, are you on the NDA list? Are you on the NDA list?
Yes.
Are you watching that stuff going on?
That is not in the discussed about the front for about a year.
Well, it's gotten really heavy in the last few days.
Yeah, well, it's just that.
The debate on the style sheets.
What's that?
The debate around style sheets?
It's flaming from both ends. Even the NDA
I see it.
Fire.
It's everywhere.
I don't know what they're on about. Just sorry, style sheets in general, not a big deal. Just de-link it.
It's less and less is a good thing. The only thing I can see is just a bit of friction happening when you got like a large-ish team, where you have to mix pretty much the workflow, just like a decision.
Help yourself to pizza, everybody.
Yeah, no, that's correct, but in a project.
Get something to eat first.
Yes. So usually the pizzas I get in Singapore are actually called Canadian pizza. I don't know if it's Canadian pizza, but they're just like around the corner and they're just...
I ate on the weekend, I wasn't sure. Never sure.
I'm going to eat after, so not maybe one snack, just to keep the energy running. Cafe.
Yeah, you're doing all right. I think you're doing all right.
Yeah, but it's just like, again, just to the intake of coffee that is probably fighting the cold first, and then that goes on later to the energy, multiplication of coffee. It's supposed to be needed. So, I keep doing it. Over and over. So we talk about that thing, and if it gets boring, what can I talk about? Yes, I want to figure out if that is working.
Doesn't fit the window better, right? I'm trying to play with. It's maximized here, but I put in to YouTube higher. So,
Nice to meet you.
Grab some quick. That's a good idea.
Yeah, we've been doing it a lot lately. We've been down on King West. We lost our bench down there.
That's the one, yeah. Just in case, just like everybody gets bored with like testing, and then I can think about something that's like as boring.
One thing I will ask you, because I see you on fire trying to get all the stuff. Trying to fight now and going to down and set up waiting to be done. It sounds like it's official.
Yeah, it's
Is it the professional mobile?
Maybe we need to get it right here for build.
So I was certified before they changed it to 2 tiers. So I was familiar with these guys.
I'll just like that, check that out. Just like that, it's PCR as such.
Maybe to been looking at this process since they changed it, because I was in the process. I had one big exam. So they broke it into 2 exams in August. But I was certified back in April. Yeah. So I think it's maybe just not necessarily difficulty, but it's what material is covered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most of it, all of AC,
Take the leftover scraps. I want to make sure everyone gets some. It's always hard, you never know how much pizza you order. You never know how many people are going to show up. So this was impressive considering when we first got here, the guy at the front door, name. What are you looking at? I found it hard. The first one was even broken. Yeah, because I went next door to the TV branch. Yep. And it was locked. So and then the security, the elevator, and I was just... It's not super convinced, but I mean, obviously, made it work.
Look at the exam summary where they kind of give you pages and all the information. What I generally what I did when I had the exams, I took that and basically went through the list and marked off anything that I was unsure about And I would study into the ground. It's a good way to do it. So.
Yeah, like right now I'm going from but if it's online, I should not go to that on.
No, you don't go to the test center. It's not like a Microsoft, like a older style.
Yeah, see, that's going to be the problem. It's still
Nice. Lots of material.
Yes, because unit is better.
Yeah.
Because I take I have a whole question of I can understand all the six.
I haven't worked with Unity. There's a lot to it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh, there's like a window?
Yeah, they say students, I don't know, what's the whole session? And every year, so I was trying to survive the year. They don't have any. So they have to open every month. But as soon as I have a chance,
No, it's just like that way to do corporate like indexation, so I'm just covering the corporate like the consultants, which other things. Well, that would just show how you can kill two chickens with one bee. Two birds with one stone. Yeah, from being and yeah, that's absolutely possible. Because Partner is a guy that is actually maintaining like this rules and stuff. Was no, wasn't it? Okay. My cunning plan was to Microsoft to acquire because it's really good, and since I stopped doing Calabash, which was a little bit too much really oriented for the developers, and I was looking for the Microsoft acquire aspect. So that's the other direction. It's probably not, but I think they're scared.
Especially after he went off because of he's like
Just joke for you.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. When you identify, you probably
Okay, right.
You have to wait for the bill to go through so they can put in.
Okay. I just wanted to be fast, but I was
It's going to be a four more guys coming in. For hours, yeah. Peter, Phil's probably going to go. It's good.
now I am going to know, but I will just explain what it is.
Yeah, that's
It's just the complexity.
No, see, we're going to need to do the screen share and get the slides.
What's funny at the summit,
He's gonna have to share those.
Yeah, unless is there a way to can I connect to it? It says Surface Hub. It should be able to,
That's a challenge, though.
because it's like I'm using OBS to do this, so I could, you know, stick my display there or a different webcam or anything. But there's no way I can focus
He's
on
gonna show him the
this.
slides, but he's also gonna demo too.
Yeah, we really need it on Ring Central. And then I could even half and half it.
yeah.
But
That's gonna talk to us. Is Sen off mic or not?
Sorry?
Is mic on or not? He's not straight.
Conceptualizing? Not anymore. Not anymore. I told you the bottom was going to fall out, man. The bottom fell out.
Everyone says you have to buy the dip, but then it just goes out. No, I completely stopped looking at it, like I'm just done. I moved all my stuff to a hardware wallet and I'm not looking at it for like 1 year. Like I'm done.
It really smells like .com. Kind of, but not really.
Technology,
Yeah.
technology goes about it.
Yeah, the technology is cool, but not for currency. Blockchain is cool. It works.
Enough for currency.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
When does that come? There's like a hard date, right?
Good to go? There we go. Excellent. Good job, good, nice slide.
Thank you.
Nice shoot.
Everybody ready? Great. I am the guy who got the date wrong. My name is Dylan Berry. I'm the host of Mobile.net Developers. We've been doing this for a few months now, and nice to see everybody out. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is nice. We generally do this the third Tuesday of every month. Since Ben's in town and has decided to grace us with his presence, we moved this up. So we lost our location, our previous location. A lot of you have been there before. They turned it into offices, so we lost our event space. We're still trying to figure out whether we're going to stay here or find something else on the west end a little bit. I'll keep everyone posted through the meetup site and on Twitter and everything else. Our next meetup will be my good friend Matti. He will be covering basically a bit of an extension on what Ben's going to cover here today, and talk about automated UI testing, so the UI test framework for Xamarin and Test Cloud and things like that. So that will be tentatively, I've got a question mark here because we're not sure quite on the date yet. Once again, I'll let everybody know, and it depends on the venue and the date and Matti's availability, and we'll let everybody know about that. So that's our upcoming presentation. If anybody would like to speak at a future event, please let me know. I know we've got a couple of new frameworks out there. Anybody think about Flutter? Ben and I have been talking about Flutter a little bit. There's some interesting stuff out there. Tools, there's a lot of interesting things coming out there. The mobile space seems to be getting a lot more attention recently. It seems like there's a bit of a shift again back to put attention on mobile. So that's nice to see. So there's a lot going on. If anybody would like to get up here and talk for an hour, or maybe even a short period of time, we can do a lightning round. So let me know if you'd like to present something to the group. If you'd like to connect with us, these are our links. So Twitter, we try and share out a lot of information and just basically spam you with when our next meetup is. We also try and put some very relevant things on there. So I run this account and I try and handpick some things that are relevant to Xamarin development and share them out. I like to think that's a good resource for Xamarin developers. Of course, there's our meetup site. We've got a GitHub site that we generally will share source code and presentations on, and our YouTube account where we will put recordings of our meetups if the recording works. It didn't work last time, that's why I said that. Thanks to our sponsor, and I actually should have a secondary slide in here, but thanks to our sponsor, BSI Labs. BSI Labs pays for the food. They previously supplied our venue. They help, BSI Labs, the company I work for, helps facilitate this whole event, so really bring it to life. Lots of hands-on help from them, so thank you to Matt and James and everyone else, Daniel from BSI Labs for helping out. BSI Labs is full-service enterprise mobile development shop, so technical consulting, mobile strategy, basically anything around mobile, we can do that. You can follow us on Twitter, and there's our website. Actually, just going back to this, thank you to Microsoft, and a special thank you to Matti, who's taken time out of his evening to make sure that we have the space for tonight. So thank you again, Matti. Rock. Also like to plug our cousin meetup. So they meet in this space. They're generally the last Tuesday of every month, so I think that's next week, right? Oh, 2 weeks from now. So they've got a Xamarin presentation with Mark Ortega presenting in 2 weeks from now. So that'll be serverless computing with Azure Functions. So if you haven't used Azure Functions, they're really, really interesting, lightweight, serverless way of standing up code in the cloud. So that's coming up in this space on the 27th. And without any further ado, I'll give it over to Ben. My honor, Ben.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ben. I live in Singapore, where I lead a company called Xamariners, which surprisingly do Xamarin stuff because we like that very, very much. I am going to find some slides that are here. Like that. I'm also a Xamarin MVP. I've been doing Xamarin since 2011, I believe. Yeah, it just got much better now. So now is actually a pretty good time to continue using it if you're already using it, and using it more, or start using it if you did not. Just out of interest, how many folks in the venue are familiar with Xamarin or use Xamarin? Excellent. So that's very, very good. And how many people just know about behavior-driven development? That's good. Excellent. So that's going to be useful today. Cool. But that's going to be the topic of today, is how to actually build quality software on mobile using behavior-driven development. There will be a few boring slides, and by the time you fall asleep, I'll do some exciting stuff. So if you fall asleep, let me know. Usually I've got some Xamarin monkeys to throw at people. I don't have those anymore. They're really rare. You can probably find them on eBay for like $10 or so. So that's yes, no, they're very nice, very different and so on. Yes, the other thing I do as well is do an event called Monkey Fest. We did the first iteration last year in Singapore, which is far away, but there is no winter, so just like pros and cons. And we were like recently at the MVP Sony meet with this guy, for instance, where we've been meeting with more Xamarin MVPs and a couple of Xamarin folks in order to figure out how we can continue doing some Xamarin centric event, and we're going to do that. So it's probably going to be happening in Boston next year, early next year, and that probably will also be sprouting a little bit over the globe, some Monkey Fest events, next to your location. That's going to be fun. There will be monkeys. That's just like and it will be free. Free is good, or almost free. All right. So BDD and mobile. So what happens is just like a programmer is going out for a stroll one evening, and what happens is his wife asks him to swing by the store and pick a gallon of milk, and if they had eggs, to get a dozen of eggs. And the programmer returned with 12 cartons of milk and said they had eggs. So that's that can kind of happen, but it would be right. I mean, just he would have like some really nice milk and all that. That would be just like a drinkable and all, but that's not exactly what was really wanted. So if you've been developing for a long time and you're a developer, you know that you're focusing on how to build something right, but not necessarily to build the right thing. And that is a problem that we're going to be looking at today, to make sure that the clients are happy. So they're dealing with clients, and unhappy clients, that's a lifesaver. That's just basically think about BDD as just like a kind of firewall between you and an unhappy client, because the client is going to be happy all the time. Nice, just like smile, clients smile in a bucket. So what is BDD? That stands for behavior-driven development, and that's an outside in. That means that we are looking at the big scope, basically where the application starts, usually the user interface, instead of looking straight at the internals. So if you're doing already some unit testing, like in the shape of TDD, you are looking at the inside out. You just want to make sure that the stuff is built right, but not necessarily that you, again, build the right thing. It's got multiple stakeholders. That's the interesting stuff about it, because as we will see, everybody can speak BDD just within the project stakeholders, from the project owner to the designers to the QA people, whatever. Everybody can speak it because it's human. and everybody can speak human. But usually it tends to be written in English because well, we develop a lot in English those days for some reasons. Why write in French? French is a bit longer, boring and all that. C'est pas très intéressant et mon français technique est à chier, donc we're not going to go there at all. And yes, it's really, really easy to automate because we got already the right tool there, and that works really well with Agile. How many of you are just like more like Agile-y into Agile? Anybody else doing something else like waterfall still? Yeah, well, so happens. Yeah, they're not necessarily just like mutually exclusive. You can just put a little bit of agility in your waterfall and make some like smaller waterfalls. Like, not Niagara style, more like some waterfall. Another one. Right. So ultimately, BDD is going to describe a cycle of interaction with well-defined outputs, resulting in the delivery of working, tested software that matters. So, yep.
Just want to ask, is there a difference between BDD and
TDD?
Domain-driven design?
And domain-driven design, behavior-driven development is literally looking at an application from the user for the endpoint, for the user interface. So we're literally simply trying to mimic what a user will do. That could, technically you could do BDD as well with some application that will not have a physical user. For instance, you could have an API that will have some BDD associated with it for like another kind of application point of view. And then you kind of impersonate the application and say, just build some tests on it, I will just go through that. That is literally purely from the endpoint of the application.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yes, that is going to result in a bunch of tiny stories that will have a BDD grammatical structure, or cucumber. And what we're trying to solve is also all the quiproquos and misunderstanding that can happen within a project by solving multiple problems, such as jargon. Two different, you're trying, if you've got like a domain kind of name, an object, multiple stakeholders might call it something else, which will result of a bit of confusion with code that will have different naming convention for the same thing, and that is just slightly painful. And ultimately, that will describe without side effect and just like literally without misunderstanding function that you are trying to achieve, which is nice. Written in English. So as I mentioned before, literally all those project participants will be able just to meddle with these behavior-driven development definitions from UX architects, business analysts, scrum masters, PMs, developers, testers, users, all using exactly the same construct, which is kind of, it's very simple. It's very, very simple. Let's just go back into agility a little and see how you can actually build software. You've got like two ways of doing stories. It can be either horizontal, like a horizontal slice of cake, or vertical, like a vertical slice of cake. So if you think about a software, you will need to have multiple layers in order to get it working. You need to have a database layer, for instance. You'll be able to have a transport protocol of some sort, some middleware, some security, and so on. And traditionally, especially in the past, we used to actually get all of those bits right before being able to get a working environment to present to the client. So that would take a bit of time. Let's say like from the start, the inception of the project, when the scope is being defined between the client and yourself, you will spend like maybe like 6 months or maybe more in order to be able to have something. Here we go, press play, you can see something happening. And in a lot of cases, something happening is really not at all what the client wants. You say, yeah, you spend like 6 months doing something we don't want, can we start again, please? So that was a bit of a problem, right? Doesn't matter. Horizontal, yes, so it is difficult to prioritize them as well. The reason why is you just literally need to have all of those layers in order just to have anything to demonstrate. So you can say, we're going to build the database layer first, and then we're going to do the user interface secondly, and so on. Well, that's, you'll have to do that in parallel, unfortunately. So a good example is the guys that were set to build a ATM system. We found out that actually the two stories that a user really wanted is to be able to withdraw some money at all time and to be able to have a look at their bank statement. any other features, such as changing the PIN or whatever is available now on the cache ATM stuff, were not really needed. So if the project would have focused first on solving those two problems and just keep the rest for later, well, a lot of time could have been gained and they could have gone to market a bit earlier than they did. So now if we're looking at vertical user stories, that is literally just getting, for instance, defining the project on stories that are meaningful for user point of view, and then delivering them either in a working version, in a kind of semi-working version using, for instance, some fake data, but that is something that is demonstrable. Demonstrable?
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. By the way, if I'm speaking too fast, which I tend to do all the time, tell me to slow down. That will work for about 30 seconds, and I will go back to the normal pace. That's just like, it's a known issue. I've got a bug, but it's not solvable. I'm going to strip little now, as well, just like this is hot. There's an excellent band called Death Grips. They do some kind of hip-hop, but with the best drummer on the planet, which is called Zach Hill. Used to play in a band called Hela. That's very, very fast. It's great. If you don't know them, sometimes they just do gigs, and they don't come to the gig itself as an art statement, which is really annoying. But it's also good. Right. Do you want me to tell you about Singapore, like for 30 seconds before I continue, just like as an interlude? Okay. Anybody here has been to Singapore? What? No. Okay. Where is Singapore? Yes. Precisely where?
Born into Malaysia.
Yes. You know your stuff, but you know your stuff too much. Yeah. Yes. So that is a pretty decent country. That is like a town the size of the M25 in London, which is just the size of London. It's at the very southern tip of mainland Malaysia. Does that make sense? Because Malaysia is a little bit all over the place, but that it is there. And there is no more tigers there at all. And the guy that called the place Singapore was like a prince of something, or like a sheikh or sultan or whatever, and he was probably drunk because he thought that he saw a lion just in Singapore, and there definitely are no lion in Malaysia, not that big, and said, oh wow, that's a place of the lions, let's call it Singapore, just like like the lion, like in Walt Disney, Lion King or whatever, and that's like, that's it. In Malay, it's called, that's a place called like Temasek, which is a city on the sea. That's all for Singapore for now. Let's go back to our vertical user stories. Sorry? Language English. Yes. Well, okay, let's make another interlude. There is some English, there is also obviously quite a fair bit of Mandarin spoken, but official language is English. Then there's going to be Mandarin, then Bahasa, which is a language that is spoken in Malaysia and in Indonesia, then English a bit, and then there's something interesting called Singlish, which is basically a mix of that all in one sentence, spoken very fast, that you can't understand. So when people don't want you to understand something, they switch to Singlish, they're sure that only born and bred Singaporean will understand. There you go. So, basically, user story would be just having a cache deposit story, check deposit story, a cache withdrawal story that is going to be decomposed in all the cases that can happen. And I will describe pretty much these features, such as, all right, when I go to a cash register and put my card and put the right code, well, then I would be able just to log into the system and be allowed to withdraw some money. And then if I put if my card number is wrong, then that's going to be declined and so on. So you literally have to list all the different scenarios that will just create your stories. But the thing is, you don't necessarily have to have the database layer done there, because, for instance, you can box some data and have the user interface that are going to be plugged into this mock data, which will show your client, for instance, that, all right, this is how our user interface is going to look, and this is how it works with just like some data. This is mocked, but it's still functional. Do you like it? Yes, we do. And if I say no, well, you can just like change that really, really quickly. So traditionally, we'll spend like have like 1 week or 2 weeks kind of build or continuous build if you want, but that would be a bit dangerous to provide that to a client, where you can provide visibility at all time and make sure you don't go in the wrong direction for too far too long. Mind you, that can also be avoided by having a talented user experience architect and a really good designer, which will just like avoid quite a lot of issues. Out of interest, who's got a user experience architect in their team? Yes. For the one who don't, just ask why and just get one. They're very nice. Although there's quite a lot of persons call themselves user experience architects without not being really any of those. Need to be rather good at it. But that, like a good one is very, very difficult to find. That is going to solve you a ton of issues down the line. So ultimately, when I explain to a client what is the most important when building a mobile application, at the end, it doesn't really matter how it's built. Nobody really cares. Because the developer, you care. But the client says, I don't care. It could be React Native, it could be Xamarin, it could be whatever. Maybe if you've got a .NET kind of user base, team within your organization, that would matter. But ultimately, you want the application to be working well and to have 5 stars, to be just flowing and easy to understand. And the only way to achieve it in a pretty much short way is just to have like the right guy that is going just to design a right flow and correctly, and a good designer that is going to make it look sexy. There we go. Right. So let's have a look at a couple of positive scenarios on those vertical stories, such as user enters a packet password or user enters the amount larger than the daily withdraw limit. Negative scenarios would be like wrong bank card or ATM has no money, which happens, which is super annoying, especially after queuing. Oh my god. This is what I was talking a bit earlier beforehand, right? You just have the build right axis and the right product axis. You just want to make sure that you definitely have the right product and as much as possible to build it right. Because this is where success is going to happen. If you build the right product, but it's not built right, well, you're going to get into like technical debt and like a maintenance shenanigan. If that is not the right product and it's badly built, obviously you'll end up with use as scrap, which happens quite often too. And if obviously you build it right and it is still not the right product, what's going to say, hey, I just wanted like a cheesecake, you gave me like a cheeseburger, it's not going to work very well. I mean, they're both edible. Personally, I prefer cheeseburgers, but that's preference. So we've got like multiple kind of tests that you will be able to build. But the unit test, again, is from the inside out. That is going to validate that what you build is built right. Got integrations tests that are going just to make sure that the handshake between the different parts of the systems is going just to be shaking hands nicely. TDD is dealing with acceptance tests, which is literally for the user point of view. I just want to make sure that what I wanted or what I use is actually working as it's supposed to be. And then you've got exploratory or creative testing, which is going to, whenever you build a product, basically, users are going to use it on the way that is crazy. We were talking about the Xamarin team a couple of days ago on how us users, developers, are using it in a way that they didn't really, it's not intended to. But always, it's always intended to, because you give us something and we're going just to do some different crazy stuff. And well, they just cried a little bit and just been fixing those bugs in order just to be able to accommodate us. But yes, that's the thing. As long as we've got a product available, everybody is going to do different stuff with it, and you'll find a way to break it. So this is what those exploratory testing stuff is going to help out. It's nice to always dedicate a small percentage daily. If you happen to have a testing department in your company, just spend a bit of time on that, because I will save some angry users are going to say, oh, this application is terrible. I just tried to make a cake with like a GPS application, it doesn't work, 0 star. And you don't want that, because it kind of matters a bit. I don't know if you are looking at the App Store, you tend to install applications. If you have the same 2 similar applications, you prefer the one with 1,000 stars, like 5 stars, or the one with actually 0 review, or just like 1 star? 5 stars, right? Because it works. But the thing is, users are unfair, because they would just get like a very simple, single bad experience, application crash. Ah, it crashes, somebody just made something that is not good. Bim, 1 star, the end. And you lose a lot of money. which is annoying. Ah, yeah, experience. Right. So yes, we follow one 5-star application. So Cucumber, that's a software requirement and testing rules that enables this style of development, right? BDD. And that builds upon the principle of test-driven development, except that is looking at the picture from the user point of view. So test-driven development, if you're familiar with that, ultimately you're going to write, before writing any line of code, you're going to write a test that is pretty much supposed to validate the function you want to build. So if you want to build a login method with username and password, we're still going to say, all right, I'm just adding this username and this password, call the method, and I want a yes if that is validated correctly, or a no or no message if that fails. So this is what you can do with that. The test should be written by the developer and customer all together. For BDD, the test should really not be, if possible, written by the developer. It would be, if you've got the luxury to have a business analyst, that would be nice. Sometimes you don't have the luxury. In this case, try to get some help maybe from your user experience architect. And if that's failing, maybe your tester that could help. And if that's failing, then maybe the developer. But the developer really has to get into a practical mode and not of inside out, but of outside in, just like get into the skin of the user, which is really, really hard for developers. They're not made to just get into user skin. Because that's gross, first of all, and just, yeah. So, and that is always highly automatable because you don't want to be, the point of doing all that also is just to save a little bit of free some time for the manual testers. That is not replacing fully manual testing at all. You still need to have, in any case, to have a testing manager that will be able to just make sense of all this crap and just raise the relevant bugs when they arise, and do also some exploratory testing as well. And there are some things that you will have trouble automating. Some frameworks such as TestCloud / App Center testing / whatever will help to do that, but that is going to be part of what you'll be talking about next time, I believe. And I'm not going to get into that today. But still, manual testing, if you want to achieve some customer satisfaction, 100%, 5-star, you still need to be in. Yeah, unit tests are for developer, again, to build the right thing, and acceptance tests are for the customer to build the right thing. So build the thing right and build the right thing. There are going to be higher level constructs because they are literally dealing with the interaction of a user with an interface, or with a system with another system, as impersonated by the same system. And to be honest, it's kind of by experience, customers are quite happy to be able to engage in this activity, and that saves a lot, again, of misunderstanding that can cause friction over time. I keep on saying customers because this is what I do. I just build applications for customers. Obviously, if you are working within an internal organization, well, that's going to be the same thing, but the customer is going to be your product owner or whatever. So, what have we got there? Yeah, doesn't really matter. We'll just skip that. So, the thing is just, I went through that again. It's nice to legitimize and just to standardize the actual jargon of the application, just to make sure that we call a user either a user, a customer, a whatever, just like make sure that we always use the same term for the same class or the same domain object. Otherwise, you end up with code that doesn't understand each other. So Cucumber will help with this process because, again, you will end up with some human language that will reuse the same set of code. And there is actually IntelliSense support if you're using Visual Studio for Windows or Visual Studio for Mac. That will help you reuse some steps that will have the same jargon included as well, which is kind of nice. So like a typical Cucumber test is going to be like that. You'll have a feature which is going to be, for instance, sign up. So sign up should be quick and friendly. Scenario, successful sign up. The user should get a confirmation email and be greeted personally. So that is pretty much a really typical, again, scenario like template, will start usually with a precondition, such as given I have chosen to sign up, which is where you are validating the state you should be in before executing the next set of steps. By the way, that is called a step. When I sign up with valid details, so here you're pretty much validating your validation, then I should receive a confirmation email. You need to be able to validate that an email has been sent. And that's what we're going to achieve, because we are starting from the outside in, and you will not write a piece of code that is going to send an email until you actually are starting from the scaffolding that this step will create. We'll have some live example later. And at the end, I should see a personalized greeting message. All of those, especially in mobile, when you're using a framework that makes sense, I think in Xamarin we're more like MVVM people, you can build your application to make sure that you have a hook on all the speed there, which is kind of magic, you know. When you just write your first step and say, wow, I've just been executing this method, this command, which is pretty much how you will mock typing on the button, for instance. You execute the command, right? And then things will happen. It will change the state of your view model. Then you can just look at what's happening on your view model and say, yes, it works, beautiful. So that is a feature, that's a scenario. A feature can have multiple scenarios, such as successful sign-up, unsuccessful sign-up, crazy sign-up, whatever. But as you can see, this is always natural language. And then you can use, you'll be able to use actual variables to be able to run a test with different data that you would like to test. For instance, if you are validating a credit card number, you would be able to say, all right, that is a variable credit card number, and then I am going to give different examples of this credit card, so a different outcome. So that would be pretty thorough. Well, Cucumber is just one framework. In the .NET world, we're more like .NET developers, we're using SpecFlow. That was usually a Ruby tooling. Cucumber/Calabash has been scrapped by the by Microsoft, I suppose, or the App Center team. And what is why I was well, we've got a testing framework that's been BDD testing framework that has been around the .NET community for like probably 10 years now, I suppose, called SpecFlow. Anybody heard about SpecFlow? No. Yes, three. Good. Oh, yes, excellent. Actually, the guy that wrote SpecFlow, which is called Gaspar Nagy, was at Montifest this year. I'm going to try to get him back to the next Montifest. He's a very, very cool guy. And yeah, a lot of people are using his stuff, and that's great. It's not making a cent out of it, by the way. All right. So I went through that already. So ultimately, all the steps that we saw, which is given I am an authenticated user, when and I am on the login screen, when I put my username and password in the relevant field and click on the sign up button, then something happens. So all that is going to generate the scaffolding for each of those steps, which is basically like a unit test. Each step is a unit test, if you want, that will need to be validated to be able to execute the next step. So the developer or whoever writes a feature, again, that's a high-level set of scenarios, such as the feature is just to log in or just to log in into the system. The scenario will be the different error that you can get, validation error. The step will be what steps needs to be validated to validate the scenario. And from here, the IDE tooling will, the tooling itself, you can use the command line, I suppose, will generate step definition, which are literally NUnit or XUnit or MS test method, or just test really, that will then talk to the SpecFlow or Cucumber framework and ultimately into your system. But that's all done automatically. You could do that by hand if you really wanted to, but that would be totally pointless. So the thing to consider as well when you are writing some requirements is just to make sure you are describing them properly and as fully as possible in order to literally validate everything you have in mind. For instance, Customers should be prevented from entering invalid credit card details. Well, that's rather broad. Against, if a customer enters a credit card number that isn't exactly 16 digits long, when they try to submit the form, it should be redisplayed with an error message advising them of the correct numbers of digits. So that kind of wraps it a little bit better. That's another example again. Feedback when entering invalid credit card details. So there is like a construct in Cucumber, whatever, which is a background, which is within a feature, a set of steps that are going to be executed beforehand. So you don't have to repeat that on every scenario. That looks like nothing much, but when we do like a normal size enterprise application, we end up with maybe 200 to 500 tests. That's good. Even just like one line of repetition just helps a lot and makes it a bit more readable. And it will also save time on execution? Maybe not. It will not save time on execution, unfortunately. So credit card number too short. So given I have chosen an item to buy and I am about to enter my credit card details, and then we kick into the scenario when I enter a credit card number that is less than 16 digits long, and then all the other details are correct. Ultimately, that is a good thing to have. Yeah, cool. I'm going just to speed up a little bit in order to get into practical cases.
I think we have a question here too, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on like when you write your test scenario, like it will be executed in the application and as you write it.
So as you write it, first you will need to write it. We don't have a watch that is just looking at this text file. When you save your text file, that is going to then generate the kind of the scaffolding for each steps. Scaffolding is just going to be literally a regex magic that's going to be looking at this piece of text saying, all right, if this regular expression matches what you've got in your, any line that you've got in your feature file, text file, then we will map it to this unit test method that has got as an attribute this regular expression described. And then that is literally then behaving like a normal unit test, test really. That's going to be executing by the framework of your choice, which is, I'm using NUnit personally, but you can use any other testing framework. So ultimately that is simply going to create a scaffolding. You still have to do the coding to build the application, of course, but that is just like very useful. I'm going to do some live examples on how it works. And we're just even going to create a feature altogether. It's so exciting. Wow. So again, given it's establish a context, when perform an action, then check the outcome. So given I have $100 in my account, when I request 20, then $20 should be dispensed. You can then use also, but I'm not using it that much, but the end will be able, is pretty much a repeat of the previous keyword. So if you say, then my card should not be returned and I should be told to contact the bank, that is actually two thens under the behind the scenes.
If it was and my card is invalid instead of but my card is invalid.
That's okay. That's okay. It's just like for readability. That will just like pretty much create another given behind the scene ultimately. But an and behave exactly the same way at the end. Also, given is slightly it's got a side effect where we'll kind of reset the context. We've got like a context object within the testing the SpecFlow framework that will be reset if you just use a given. You can have like pretty much add kind of state in this context bag that will allow you to validate some pieces of information across steps without having to re-enter them again and again. Otherwise, you'll end up with a big verbosity blob that will be unreadable. Yes, something to bear in mind as well. There are no dependencies between scenarios. So ultimately, you can execute them in parallel in any order. You should really not have any state dependency between them. And you want to do something also, which is keep it stateless if possible. and very, very, very small in the execution time. So what I tend to do whenever I do those BDD tests is actually use a mocking framework of your choice, or just mock some object, but have like some fake data available in order to be able just to not rely on a database, any kind of database or any kind of RPCs. Otherwise, well, that is going to be quite expensive in time, and that is not going to be that much efficient. You could technically have it both ways, which is running in a continuous integration kind of process those kind of very inexpensive tests, and just like once in a while, all right, we're going just to test all that against an API. But then you need to make sure that you need to have the ability to get the API always in a kind of clean state, because let's say that you are changing the password of a user in one step, and then you want to log in with this same password on another test. If you change the password, that's going to break the other test. So yeah, that's a solution for that we implemented when you actually use real databases, which is basically you do a backpack of your, if you're using SQL Server, a backpack, and then you can do something like attributes within your scenarios that will say, all right, when you execute the scenario, please, before that, restore the database. So you can automate that. That's slightly more involved, but it's totally possible. When you're working, unfortunately, in real life with third parties, because customers tend to have third parties and you don't have access to their system, that is absolutely impossible. Because unfortunately, we're not in an ideal world, and staging, UAT, all these funk environments are actually quite rare to have with those third parties, and just try to run some tests, repeated tests on a live system, they're not going to like it very much at all. So just like keep it as clean as tight as possible. There are various techniques to use. Again, I'm using simply I'll go through that, but keeping you've got your POCOs, right? And for each POCO, I tend to generate some fake data by hand in order for it to be meaningful. Reason why it's a multiple purpose. First of all, you've got data to test your application and it makes sense. Secondly, that allows to get some really nice vertical layers of cake, which is a UI developer doesn't need to have an API ready in order to be able to have some data. Because the model here, fake data, the application just works. And that also serves as a purpose for demoing the application to a third party without having a full horizontal layer baked. So that's something I recommend. You've got like various tools that are going to generate some kind of ish data. Rather go the extra mile and just provide exactly what the user, so it's a customer wanted, and it's kind of easy those days to get your Postman up, make a call to an existing API, get the JSON, and yeah, just put that into a file, and then just load it whenever you want to load this data. I need a bit of Coca-Cola. I can't have that right. Got that in France. Don't find it in Singapore though. Pretty popular in France, but advertised one at all. Right, bin. No, don't. Okay, cool. So in the tech stacks, to be honest, we're all .NET developers here, right? Yes. So yeah, basically that's going to be a spec flow for this kind of stuff. You can use what in, what here, Selenium, whatever. JavaScript got also their Cucumber implementation. Literally any technology stack will have an implementation of this framework, which is nice. What is really nice is to have some IDE plugins. Visual Studio has got a really nice plugin for spec flow that allows to automatically generate all the things that you need. And then for automation, ultimately that is a unit test, right? So any CI server would be able just to run that. Yes, so, sorry?
It doesn't have a TFS?
Yeah, no, it's just a unit test at the end, so TFS will be able to run that no problemo. So ultimately you're going to end up with well-designed app, because you literally build what is going to be defined by the customer together with the developer, business analyst, and so forth. It's going to be well implemented because, well, you've got 100% test coverage, and you really build from your test up to your view model, and then that's going to define probably just your services and so on and so on. Something that is quite important is the over-engineering free code that you get, such as, oh, but if I had that bit, we're going to be future-proof. And this future-proof is just like all the trash you need to delete a little bit later. So, yeah. You know what? My favorite stuff to do in coding is actually deleting code. That's the best thing ever. It's so satisfying. Just like, yes, delete. Oh, it's always good. Always good. Yeah, anybody shares this? Yeah, it's so good, right? It's the best. It is the best. Yeah, well, by doing that, that's a drawback. You don't get that much code to delete, which is a bit sad for some of us. Yes, and your code base is going to be highly maintainable. If you pair that with obviously either pair programming or at the very least having a pull request review cycle, pretty much the quality of the code is going to be improved all over the board. That means, again, less code deletion or less new comment. Or you use the wrong casing there. Well, you've got like a sonar cube or stuff like that. I can help you just to, if you're like case eccentric. Okay. And that's not important. Yeah. So these PDD stuff are working just like for both this kind of console test, which is just testing your view model upwards, but you can also use it to run a UI test such as Test Cloud or App Center now, App Center test. I will show you how to do it. I am not going to run it because it will probably fail because I've got bad luck with this kind of demos. So I just want to avoid that bit. I will show you the console ones. And next week or so, you'll have the pleasure to figure out how Test Cloud works in details. Yes, so, yes. So when you're doing a UI test, the pros is you are closer to the user truth, but the cons is very expensive. I mean, both in terms of money and in times of running time. If you want to have like a comprehensive coverage of your application through UI testing, especially when you start adding a lot of different devices, that is going to happen. Well, that's going to be quite long and expensive. So it's not something you would like to run every time somebody check in some code in their feature branch. More like at least at the development branch, or even at the whatever branch you put on top of that. That is definitely required. If you're not using UI testing like Test Cloud or whatever, please do, because or otherwise your app will crash on this Samsung whatever.
Always on the Samsung.
Always on Samsung, right? It's annoying. And even two Samsungs that with the same specification. That's doing my head in. What are they doing with their phone? Samsung. Yes, so when you're using console test, which is again testing the view model upwards, that's going to be very cheap to run, but you don't have any UI layer, and therefore you're not going to be as close to the truth. So best approach or my best approach is to literally write the set of tests once, specification once, and then allow them to run as console test or UI test. BIM. So that is the demo is going to follow. Any questions so far? Excellent. Demo time. With like very, very large fonts. James Montemagno will be proud. Actually, no, I didn't. So it's a bit too wide. So here we've got an application that, oh, I need to turn that around. That is going to be rotate right. Yes, cool. Yes, I don't know if you're familiar with this product. It's called Genymotion. I don't work for them, but that's what happens to me. I've got a Mac here that is going to run out of battery. Why is it? Why is it that it's running out of battery?
Because that's not plugged in.
Because that is not plugged in.
Oh.
Ah, yes, yes. I can put it somewhere else that will. Yes. Oh, that's good. We avoided like a black screen of death. Is that lights?
There's a giant power bar there.
Just, you know what, just give me that.
We can plug this one there.
Oh, better. The lights on.
I can move that around a bit.
That's okay,
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
yeah. We're good.
Oh, the lights off.
Yes.
Oh, that's
good. Yes, cool.
They're not.
So,
To defaults? Yeah, let's go default.
Alex, no, Cortana. Yes, so I've been trying like all the different ways to actually build Xamarin Forms applications, especially the iOS bit, within like your workstation. So and that remains, I believe, the most efficient, which is just having a Mac of some sort and having Windows as a VM with Parallels. That is going to be friction-free. If you start having like a Mac Mini somewhere and try to connect it through your network, that is not going to be as smooth, right? I've been trying the Mac in Cloud stuff. That is not good either. So, but well, here we go. So the problem is, when you do that thing here, you're doing Xamarin Form application, and you would like to run that on a simulator instead of, let's say, your device. You cannot, well, you could technically use the Google-provided emulator, but you will have to, there will create a bit of friction, you have to do a little bit of handshaking. Therefore, I use those guys, because that's easy, Genymotion. Yeah. So if you literally use the way, oh, damn, what my things. Yes. The way you just bind to it, just go ADB connect, and then what? 192.168.57.11. 57.1. And I'm connected, and then it will show here if I was actually on the in that bit there. Let me just put my point quickly up. Yeah, it should show somewhere. That show. Probably because my screen is on a very, very interesting resolution. So, yeah, well, anyway, that
left.
I don't want to do that. Well, anyways, I'm connected and I can.
The bottom that says there.
Sorry?
See the bottom there? Yeah, no. So your left.
This left?
Left. There.
There.
No, the other one. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no. The one in the middle.
Yes, there we go. Sorry. Just like this blue light theme is just like confusing the hell out of me, and the resolution as well. So anyway, that was not there before, and now I connect it to it. It magically appears. And if I launch the application, that probably will work. Probably, I say, because we are starting the demos, and usually they fail. So let's see how it goes.
Hey Ben, the Genymotion emulator that you're using.
Yeah.
So what's the benefit there? So
Benefit there if I
Google
would.
emulator.
yeah.
Sorry.
Versus the Google.
Google engine.
Well, first of all, it's just like very, very quick to. Well, first of all, setting up the Google emulator, you still have to have a couple of manual steps in order just to have the handshake. Secondly, getting a new image is pretty much quite slow for my experience with it. That's the two things. Just like the little bit of time I save on the handshake, and yeah, I like a frictionless thing. What's your take?
I don't have one.
No, I mean just like all my dev teams go it. We used to use Xamarin Live Player beforehand, but then that didn't happen anymore. Genymotion would provide the latest images pretty quickly, and again, setting up a new emulator would take seconds instead of multiple minutes.
Is it better than Visual Studio Emulator?
Well, the problem is Visual Studio Emulator will be kind of finish, but the problem is I cannot virtualize that many layers. I'm already virtualized here.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Discontinued VS emulator anyways.
Sorry?
Oh, it's discontinued, yeah, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the emulators don't have the Play Store. So you need something like Facebook or Google Plus to say log this Facebook or something. With the
You mean to install
all
the Google APIs and stuff?
Oh yeah, all the images are just come just
You
like
install the
all.
Google API.
So anyway, that works. Excellent. So let's sign in. How do I sign in? I don't know. I'm not sure. Is it? It's probably the wrong password, but that's not the point anyways. Am I debugging somewhere? I don't know. The screen is very small. Yeah, excellent. Doesn't matter. That's not what I wanted to prove. What I wanted to have a look at is more at the tests. So, actually, let me get to this one here. That's the iOS version. There we go. So, I'm running under. I've got, when we build application, usually we've got like multiple configuration. Now we've got like all the traditional one. The one that I tend to put as well is debug fake, which is simply allowing me just very simply to have access of my fake data repository and also fake layer of services. So traditionally in a mobile application, you will call a service, and the service will just call an API that will just do something, return some data, and so on. But for a testing point of view, that will not work so well. So what I tend to do is have again like some kind of example. There we go, like a fake assembly, and it will have some data. So if I've got some members, that's just pretty much a list of stuff. Or we can just get some JSON that we load, and then we'll be able just like to have fun with some real data. Same for services. Services are going to be stupid. Are simply going to return some data. They want to duplicate the logic. That is when you're dealing with an API that doesn't belong to you. When you are building a system end-to-end, so you're going to do a lot of code reuse. All your protocols are going to be hopefully the same. I'm not a big fan of DTOs, but that's just, I think that a JSON serializer can just solve a lot of pains that could be caused by DTOs. But what is interesting is you could technically use your service layer that you got on your server and stuff that on your phone, and just like run the service layer on your phone in order just to be able to execute some tests, for instance, which is traditionally what we tend to do, and that is fun. And that also allows you just to have really kind of cool working demos without any connectivity. So when you need to demo something to your client or whatever, doesn't matter the state of the connection, that will always work, and that will always be extremely fast, which is nice. Sometimes it's how you win a pitch, so that's kind of nice. Cool, so yes, for a testing point of view. So, let me show you a existing test, that the UI test that we will have a quick look later on. We are going to have a look at login. Login is easy, always easy. So that's Vecflow. I'm going to make, is that a bit too small maybe? Let's make it 150. Should be good. Right. So, here, that's just like a page for the login test. So when I log with valid credentials, given I am an unauthenticated user, when I navigate to the login page view, so when I do that, that is actually considered as a variable by using like a student malarkey. So we'll see what that means. And I log in with mobile number, data, and password, the safest password in the world. Then I am authenticated. So what happens behind the scene? Well, let's have a look. So I'm going nice, wrong, right click, because it's there, up. Why is it doing that? Stop. Okay, go to step definition. Here we go. So, given I am an unauthenticated user, that is writing to it through this attribute which contains a regular expression, which is just some text really. So what I'm doing here, I'm just, we rely extensively on dependency injection because that's great from a maintenance point of view, but Miguel, the case of Xamarin, will tell you that is very, 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 very bad, which is kind of right-ish. It will be slightly better for the performance, but it depends how crazy you go with it, I suppose. Xamarin's got a built-in kind of dependency injection, but use only the resource locator pattern. You won't be able to manage your dependencies, which is what I'm really after. But Adam Headley, which is from examinehelp.com, very nice Australian dude, did a comparison of the various IOC frameworks that are available, and yeah, just we can see how angry they can get. So anyway, what I'm doing here, I'm just using a resolver. So SpecFlow is not going to play really nicely with dependency injection here because it's like super static. So well, you use a resolver, that doesn't really matter. So here I'm just, I've got a state object in my mobile application, and it's got a property that is just is authenticated. So here it's just, it's already tested, it's already built. Then after we'll have a quick, simple quick feature that nothing has been coded, so we can see how it works in action. And then I do like the should library because it's kind of nice, and so we go like the detractor saying, hey, you should assert everything. I don't know, should, first of all, just reads nicer, and secondly, if you really feel like changing your testing framework, that's fine, you don't have to rewrite your tests. It's not something that you do for other types, such as, oh yes, but if you are going to change your database layer, then, well, how often do you change your database, honestly? Does it, yeah, question, did it ever happen to anyone in this room to actually change the database layer? Because you can. No, there we go. Over-engineering.
Then that's Fluent assertions that you're using?
Sorry?
Is
that
that
should Fluent library, yes.
Fluent? Yeah.
Yes. Although we just created some more should because there's a lot of should to create that are not created yet. And then what do we do? I navigate to the login page view. Let's have a look how I do that. Here we go. So what I'm doing, I'm just resolving the navigation service because I'm using Prism, because Prism is great. I mean, just Xstream was pretty good, but it's going to be discontinued. Again, that's Adam Headley, that's doing literally everything, more or less. You've got like a fresh MVVM by Michael Woodland, which is also pretty decent. Thing is, basically, Brian Lagunas is like a product owner, I believe, for Infragistics, and Infragistics use Prism to build that commercial product. So ultimately, that's an open source project that is actually being built by a commercial company. So the level of support is kind of good. That's all. But otherwise, the MVVM framework will just do something which is just like remove the pain of having a coupled navigation service within the Xamarin Fork kind of UI layer, and then a couple of goodies. Navigation on Prism 7 is good. It's basically // to just remove a page from your stack. That is really stupidly good. Use. Right, digressions. Oh, my talks are usually 50% digressions and 50% of nonsense. So then I go to my navigation service, and I'm going to navigate a sync to the page that I just mentioned before. And it's going to do that for real. It's going to navigate a sync behind the scenes, the scene. And then I log in with my mobile number, which is that bit and that bit. So you can see the two variables, which are just like those guys there. And then you are going to add pretty much those two parameters here. Mobile number, password, it's nice and readable. And what I'm doing here is just having, getting a hook on my view model. Obviously I resolve it, I registered it when I set up the testing application. So that is going to do exactly what happens when a user enters a username and password, which is populating a view model property through binding, right? Everybody knows what binding is? Yes? Good. Very good. So Jason Smith did some good job, I suppose. And stop blaming Jason for Xamarin Fork being like buggy from time to time. It's not his fault. It's just we are using it wrong, right? No, it's true. It is true. They're literally hardworking, and all the team are just awesome. Rimarino, Jason, Noala, nice people. And then what you are going to do is just do exactly what happens when you are clicking on the button when you're doing it right. That is going to execute a command. Guess what I'm doing here? Just precisely that. Let's have a look at what we go to implementation. Why not? So yes. So that's one of the view model here. So I've got some weird kind of type of command that looks a little bit like. I'm going to just tell you exactly what that means here. So you are all familiar with async await. Yeah? Does it solve every problem in the world? No, no, it doesn't. So if you are you're on your view model here, just say, oh, I'm going to await for a API call. If you've got a spinner that is spinning, your UI thread is going to be affected, and it's going to spin a bit like that. That's because you are still kind of running that in the same thread. What you want to do is actually, well, either use reactive, and that's what Geoffrey is on it. That will allow you just to kind of pass your schema around. Or, which I did that, is just like wrap my command within a timer, which will pretty much just check if your thread for syncing and getting your API data is resolved. In the meantime, my UI will just still be 100% the UI thread. So I won't have anything like that happening. It's always fluid, and that also gives you the ability to cancel. Try just to have a normal spinner that is just on the simple, just going to be showing up in the background. You are going to await for some API call. You won't be able to cancel that because you've got nowhere to cancel. So anyway, look into it. Reactive UI can solve this problem, or something like that, basically timers. And actually, I think that James Montemagno wrote something about that somewhere that I read a long time ago, and decided to do it, and it works. There you go. So yes, basically, in any case, if you go to your user interface, that is a little bit laggy and seems to be wrong because you're doing some await async shenanigans, that would be because of likely that. Make sure that your UI thread is always clear and the user can always act on it. So yes, so that's a comment. Yeah, what I do in my comments usually as well, I just include the validation properly on it. So it's handled by the framework. And then I sign in, and the command will be executed. It's going to talk to some service and so on. That will be all very nice, all very good. Let's debug it quickly. Yeah, to find that thing there. So you see that just pop up as unit test session. By the way, I'm using the ReSharp unit test kind of plugin because I find it slightly nicer. Although the Visual Studio 1 is getting better and better, but still, that talks to me a bit more here. Going to the core, want the login page feature. Login with valid credential. Excellent. Did I in page? Yes. Login with valid credential. I can put some breakpoints here, by the way. Oh, very nice. Oh, by the way, if I were to do and la 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 la, for instance, then it will say, oh, you don't have any step for la 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 la, which is true. I don't. General step definition said, oh, that you've got this missing step that hasn't been implemented, so you could generate a class to put this step there, or copy it to the clipboard, go back to my step, and then paste it like there. Then la la la, and then it will be executed. It's pretty cool. But I'm not going to do that because that would be nonsensical. Let's debug this.
I have a question.
Sure.
On these scenarios,
Yep.
Would, in your conception, would the developers come with the scenarios, or would it be like defined by someone responsible for the business, and then we would translate it into these scenarios?
Well, usually you get some requirements from somebody. Okay. Usually giving requirements to developers is not a very good idea. Because say, yeah, no. Usually the developer says no by default to anything, and then we'll see. Just finishing on this one. Yes, just get it by your normal channel. Again, if you have a business analyst, the business analyst will be providing those. If you go for QA engineer, the QA engineer will be providing them because that's pretty much the manual test steps, right? And otherwise, failing that, well, you've got to do with the best that you have, or just ask for budget to get a business analyst or UX architect could be helpful there too. Yes, sir.
I have one question here.
Sure.
Like, for an example, you need Visual Studio to write your unit test.
Actually, you can use, you need a text file. In order to get this plugin that is going to generate the scaffolding, yes, you will need to have Visual Studio. It works on Visual Studio for Mac as well.
Yes, but
yes, sir.
In this situation, like we, in my team, we have a QA tester, not a developer. They are not developers.
Okay.
If I introduce this product for them to
yes, yes, I understand. Yes, so no, you don't need, they don't need to have that. What you need is just something like Jira or the STS thing, but I still prefer Jira, I'm sorry. It will catch up eventually. Basically, whatever task management system you're using, traditionally that thing is your story. So if you're just like relatively lean, which is just trying to create less shenanigans that is needed, basically you need to have that pasted into your story, and that's it. And then the developer copies that, pastes that in a new feature file, click, generate the thingy, done. The thing is, problem with TDD is just nobody knows what to make out of it. Just to make, I mean, it's a simple concept, right? But in order to get it right, that is complicated because I'm going to test, what shall I test? You don't know. Literally, you're going to, in the worst case scenario, you're literally going to duplicate the code that you've got like on your service and write it on your test, and that's nonsensical, but I think that happening a lot. It's just like we're not built to do that. We're built to be building things, not to be able to think about what to test. What I like with that is everybody understand that, and the framework is just generating your test, so you don't have to think about it. Oh, validate username and password. I know how to do that. Done. That is literally saving a lot of trouble over the place. The overhead is really not that much, and the benefits are huge. Basically, the quality of your code is going to improve a lot, and happy people will be happier. Unhappy people will also be happier as well. Okay. Yes, sir.
Is someone actually like doing those steps, like navigating to the page?
Can you speak up a little bit? Because I've been listening to too much death metal. My ears are literally F-U-C-K-E-D. I try to swear in a nice way. Yes. Nice. I love swearing.
No, I just wanted to know if someone's actually doing those steps, or is it all automated?
So the steps, that you need to write that because that is just a definition of your product, right? If nobody write that, there is a problem. But usually you get that written in various formats. Either you're going to have a book that is going to be a lot of prose that's going to be nonsensical, or otherwise you might have, like again, a business analyst either on your client side or on your side that will have digested all that. Ultimately, you've got a specification. That is just a specification that is unambiguous.
No, I mean, like, is someone, to execute this, is someone, or to compare to what the proper like behavior is someone actually clicking on the app, logging in?
That's exactly what that is, yes.
No, but is this doing it, or is someone there like manually doing it?
No, that is going to, so that bit is just testing just underneath the user interface. Imagine that you've got a phone, you've got a user interface, which you display on the phone. If you just try, like if you just get that Alice in Wonderland pill that just makes you very small, you get under the crack of the phone to get just under the user interface, that's exactly what we're going just to be testing. Which is basically the view model, because when you tap a button, that is executing a command. You cannot get to the button because that is expensive, or you can get, but that is what UI tests are for. But what you want to do is just get as close as possible, which is just get to the command, and then you literally are going to modify the state. This is the application running, right? You're not mocking anything. The only thing you say is just, I cannot really click on the button, but please click on the next best thing.
But is it possible to do this without the UI?
Yeah, you can. Yes, of course.
It's the code. Yeah, you're writing code that calls the service that the button would click, for example.
Like without any UI.
Yeah, basically you are writing a test script for that, like to test your script and stuff like that. You make your tester to test their step. When you do a manual testing, you put it in a...
I mean, just a good thing is that can be also used for manual testing. That is, again, testing the view, up to the view model or to the controller, if you're using MVC, I suppose. But the thing is, the same steps, that is just like binding to some method. This is just like I want this piece of text to be bound to this method. Anything can be in this method. I want to just push execute some commands on the view model. Or if you are using a framework like UI test, you can say, hey, please user, click on this button. I mean, automated user. And that is actually going to run on a real device or on a simulator if you choose to do so, and just actually mimic clicking the button for real on real devices. And we can actually do that with that, and I've got it on my machine. I'm going to show you how it works. I'm not going to execute it because it will likely fail. I can try.
So just to go back to his question, that you could have a UI and do a UI test, or you could just call the service directly through a unit test. Like you have the choice, or you could do an integration test. Like you can put whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this language, like Gherkin, can be used for absolutely anything. If you're just using in the principle of behavior-driven development, it's always the same thing. You want to be at the entry point of what you're going to test, because this is literally what makes your product that product. Usually it will be user interface, but again, if you just have an API somewhere that doesn't have any user interface, you can just pretend to be the system that talks to it and just do those operations.
Yep.
Creating user doing whatever. Usually we test, for instance, our basic CRUD on our service, on your database layer, for instance, to make sure that everything is kind of fine. That's possible.
To be honest, I make my team adapt Gherkin, and put this Gherkin into my unit test will be an easier stuff.
It will be quite easy because, and the thing you don't have to think about it, which is what I love with it, is just it's there. You just get the definition, which is relatively simple just to get, and then the developer don't have to think about it. They just need to think about what they are really good at, which is writing some beautiful, great, efficient code. I mean,
Oh yeah. So
beautiful is important.
So would you use this instead of test-driven development?
Yeah, but ultimately that is a layer on top of test-driven development. That is still test-driven development, but I would say it's TDD done right, because TDD is just again like some noodles and you don't know what the sauce on it. It's complicated, I believe, to try to make sense of TDD, because you don't know what to test. It's just like giving the rein to the developer saying, okay, what should I be testing today? It's complicated. What I love with that is just that is simple. This is just like plain English, and that is generating your test case. You don't have to think about it. So yes, and it doesn't cost more at all. Right? I need to just finish some tests. Let me show you how it works. Otherwise, already 7:46. It's good.
I have to leave unfortunately at 8, so thank you so much for coming. It's great actually. I can't wait to use it on PS4 Mac. I'm sorry that I have to leave, guys. But next month I'll be showing you not this stuff. Stuff from the UI testing standpoint. So
yes. But bear in mind that works together with what he's talking about. It's just like a good way to do it, actually.
Great. Sorry about that.
No worries. I'm going to see you next year.
Next year?
Oh no, actually, yes.
Maybe I'll come to Monkey Fest or to build.
That is next year as well.
Yeah, it's next year.
Everything next year. Just like I'll come for Monkey Fest. I'm not sure I will come here after that. But when I go to the MVP conference, I'll make the jump there.
Got it. All right. Cool.
Cheers.
Right,
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Long live the monkeys. Where was I? Yes, debugging is fine. That's right. This is very, very extremely large fonts. Okay. Debug unit test, that's it. See, there is like a picture of a bug. It's nice. I might just put the fonts in something that I can actually see. Let me put it back to that.
Could you pop up doc the text file?
A bit more?
Text file?
A bit more, right? Okay. 125. How about 125? 125 is good. Yeah. Cool. So there we go. So I just started this test. We've got debugger. The debugger understands where to go, and I'm going to F11 on that. And here we go. Oh, so yeah, it does a couple of things. So on your step, you just have a scenario context, which is just think about it. Stuff you'll use it the most is just like to add properties to the scenario context bag. so you will be able just to know what happened in the previous steps, step for instance, and just offset it against some state changes or whatever. At present, what I've got inside it, yeah, nothing. Up. Yeah, up. Very nice, very boring, perfect. And then, all right. So, by the way, I did a fair amount of helpers that facilitates the experience of testing on Xamarin Forms. I just released it a long time ago as a big ball of mud with a lot of useless stuff. My plan this year is just to get it thorough and just like to release it like as a .NET standard package, because that's the way we do it those days. And yeah, there we go. To make stuff easy. So here, I'm just going to go to my state and let's make sure that it's the right thing. Go to implementation, sure. So we're getting that, I suppose. Let me put a breakpoint there. There we go. So, yes, sure, whatever. Here we go, I'm here. Am I authenticated? Oh, well, no, so I'm not authenticated, clearly. That's a good thing. Oh, that is, if you're not familiar with this thing, it's called Oscode. No, this thing there. It does a lot of cool stuff. First of all, you have live link support, so you can do like some link queries while debugging, which is really cool. It also does a lot of things, such as telling you what's happening here without having to look at it. If you're an MVP, that's free license. If you don't have it. If you're not an MVP, well, that's a good reason for you just to move yourself. Yeah, try use it. And so on. Yes, so I'm going to do that again. Here. So that is now fantastic. Cool. So that I would say it should be false. It is false. I'm not authenticated. Very nice. What else now? Navigate to the login page. That is going to be interesting. Like where I want it. Slightly more interesting. We don't care about that. Yes, you can reuse your steps. When you've got some common steps, I can turn them in a file, and then I can use it in various scenarios. And so here what we're doing is we're going to resolve navigation service and navigate to the page called login page. So let's go to login page. Login page, we're going to go in the view. So you'll figure out that there is never ever anything in my XAML.cs. It should never be anything except except from small cases. You can usually go by. What you've got there is just yeah, that thing there, and usually these things that are just going to be annoying for testing. Still something probably will have to do that with Xamarin Form. You get this super annoying. You need to initialize Xamarin Form .init in order to be able to do whatever. So basically, because I am not using the Xamarin Form application context on the UI side, Xamarin Form doesn't like to be run without that. So you just have to tell pretty much the runner to make it shush, so we can run your test. Which means again that it hasn't been necessarily built in the totally testable way, but that's okay. We can go back. Yes, no, yes. So we're on our login page here. That's good. And let's go to our login view model. Login page view model pin. That's Prism, and we want to go to our constructor. The fonts are very big. I can't see what it is. Maybe if I do that, it's going to be good. What is it called? Yes, thank you. Just, honestly, that's too much white things. And we've got an unnavigated from and to navigating to. Excellent. Cool. So that should get hit at some stage. There you go. We're on our view model here. We're just doing some stuff around navigation service, some authentication managers, data, normal DI, right? Then I'm going to set my view model, probably. Whatever, my view model, probably nothing. Oh, yes. And then what I'm doing, I'm just like, oh, yes, I've got a cache service to do some whatever, not important. Oh, and I'm pre-populating my username and password. one. Yep, and then do some other bits and bobs. Then we've got the on navigating to kicking in. That is going to do a bunch of stuff that we don't really care about. Anyway, that validated. I could see that the page that I wanted to be on is the one that it is. And now I'm going to execute the commands on it. So set the username and password, and then go to this sign-in command, go to implementation, which is go in turn to go into implementation there. Path. So if I just press F5, yep. Yeah, cool, I've got my password. It's going to just sign in. It's going to be very happy about it, I believe. Are you happy about it? Yes, probably. Let's remove that thing. Yep, it's great. Yes, it's nice. It's all green. It's a very good use of Scott just said, yeah, this statement passes. And then it's going to do a bunch of stuff, but ultimately that executed a command, as you have seen. And something is, yeah, that ignore that is not an error, it's just again Xamarin framework trying to do something. It's not really happy that we are running the application without kind of running the UI, but we can safely ignore that. That's happening because I'm using, path. Oh no, I didn't. You're aware of that, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. If you're not aware of that, that allows you, if you just leave your command language runtime exception like that, any exception that is not rethrown is just going to be ignored. That means that you will have some headache on trying to figure out why is this not working, but you'll never see the exception. If you want to make sure that any exception that occurs will just kind of cause your debugger to actually acknowledge it, you'll have to do that thing. Yeah. Anyways. I don't need that today. And then I'm authenticated, which is going to do something like, yeah, I should be authenticating now. Yep, everybody's happy, and that's, yeah, that's just about it. So what I've got like a lot of guys that are doing various things, but ultimately that's what you want to do. You want to be able to set some properties and to execute some commands and just answer that they are good or bad. So if you were just to do something crazy, such as, let's go to our UI quickly. View model, not view model, login view, login page, yes. Let's go there. Let's do something different. Okay, let's not do that. Simply just use the existing UI, and let's just find user command. So that's my login button. I'm just going to create instead of signing in, that's going to be something like, let's just simply clear the username and password from the UI. That will be, it's very boring, but it's just simply to show how it goes. If you've got a better ID of something we can build in 5 minutes, yes, no, maybe, all right. So I'm going to be lazy, so clear me path up, and we don't care about that up. So, and we want to be a actually that's in theory should not be there yet, but PME command I'm just going to do that this way anyways. Okay, so in theory I should go back to my login page feature and create a new scenario, which is okay, let's go to that. Scenario, and what's clear, I don't know, clear credentials, whatever, fields. So, so given, yeah, will it sense or not? Oh, really? Well, in theory, I should have IntelliSense kicking in, but because that's a demo, something had to fail, so that's the one. So I'm going just to simply use copy and paste.
So be not a technical demo without failing.
Yeah. So given I am an authenticated user, so I'm still going to navigate to the login page view. I'm going to change. And I and I tap the clear me. And I tap the clear me button. Yep, something like that. Then the tree then show. Here it goes back in now. Fields now. Fields should be empty. Yeah, something like that. Why not? It's not a great test, but it doesn't matter. So that has been implemented. That's implemented. That does not. So we're going to go like generate step definition. I'm going to copy them to the clipboard. I am going to go to the where are we here? We're going to go to path. Steps. So I'm going to be dirty and add that from here. Why not? Path. So we've got like 2 pending tasks here. So what happens if I would build that thing now? Build. We should have a new test appearing. So that is going to be regenerating behind the scene. Go away, things. Right. Oh wow, some new macro tour merge. Excellent. Harrison Fjord. There's a band called Harrison Fjord, believe it or not. Really? I've got to look. Oh, no. Harrison Fjord, really? What do they do? Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look what they say. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's a bit mellow. And that looks sad a bit sad. That's scenic. It must be like where, like Norway or Okay, that's a bit like Pink Floyd, let's say, or some short like Pink Floyd. Now we know. Oh, when I've got that open, fuchsia, look into it. That's I'm going to make a quick ellipsis. So pretty much what we're talking about quickly. It's just Android is not extremely performant, and Google are looking at making an operating system that will be slightly more performant than Android. So that might be that crack at doing so, and it goes well with this. It's kind of Fuchsia, Flutter. That's kind of what is running Fuchsia is the same technology that Flutter is based on, which is ultimately Skia. We've got Skia Sharp on available to us .NET Xamarin developers, and you can do some really cool stuff with Skia. So ultimately, they are just redrawing native components using the Skia today canvas. And that's going to make stuff run a bit smoother, faster, and so on and so on. It's on the good project to check as well, Blazor. If you don't know Blazor, that's WebAssembly Razor, which is great. And that's
WebAssembly, right?
Yeah, WebAssembly. So basically, you don't use React Native, you don't use AngularJS. No, just .NET. And .NET will be compiled as an assembly, as .NET assembly, and just be running in your browser as a single file application, which it works like stupidly well. Although it's just like a little dream in Steve Sanderson's mind, but it works so well. It's incredible. Anyways, back to reality. That will not run. Probably I'll go away that. So login with no clear credential field. It exists. And if I run that, that's going to fail because that's going to get not fail. It's going to be orange, pending, like that. Exactly, because one almost definition hasn't been implemented yet, which is what we told the thing. Yes, about that thing here. That's kind of relatively important. Let's say that for some reason you break some test. Usually you should fix that. But you are waiting for another piece of the application just to be solved by somebody else in order to be able to fix the test. Don't comment the test, put it at pending, because then it's not going to be forgotten. Otherwise you're going to forget about it, and then that's just like not very good. So it's failing, comments. Excellent. Goodbye. So when I tap on the clear, So ultimately what you want to do is just like we're on the login page you model, and you want to tap on the clear me button. That's going to be like a clear me command. Clear me, I can type clear me command. Clear me command dot execute. Yeah, not equal true. That should be about right, I think. Is it about right? It's about right. We can see that my clear me command doesn't exist. That's all right. I can click there. What a great idea I have. Create property, clear me command. Yeah, why not? Okay. It's not really what I wanted. What I would like is just more like that's the wrong place. Okay. No, just delegate command. Don't need to be fancy. Clear me command, and we just want to get it. So new command. We don't have any parameters, and that is going to be something like clear me. Yeah. Should be enough. I put it. No, that's it. Can be excellent. Generate that as well. No, I don't want that one. Okay, I'm going to trick it. Doesn't matter. It's not going to be happy about it, but that's fine. Okay. I don't really need that. Do I? Why? Yeah. Okay. Ah, yeah. There you go. So, and then what do we want to do? We want to set the what? I've got a username. Username. I don't even know what it will be called. What are the properties called? Mobile number and password. Okay, we can do that. File number or string empty. And password or string empty. Yeah, path. Sounds about right. And now let's go back to here. And the credential field should be empty. Cool, yes. Let's get a hook on this guy again. And that username, no. Mobile, whatever, yeah. Should be empty, yeah. There you go. And password should be the same. Yeah, no, why? Okay, that's easier to do that. Password should be empty. Cool, done. Let's run this test. Hopefully that works. It should be revealing it like now. We got an option to say reveal all the time. I hope it's checked in, otherwise it will just fail. Sometimes it's nice to get a leap of faith. But it's like I know it will work or not. Hopefully it does. Come on, come on. Yeah, success. There you go. Done. See, it works. Simple. Allez, that's it for me. Any more questions? Just like if you got still doubts on that, please honestly don't, because that is just like good stuff. I got two love in software engineering, or more than that, but like the main one is just definitely the monkeys, and the other one is TDD. Not BDD, damn, I said it wrong. BDD, they go really hand in hand together. That just solve a lot of problems. Again, less disagreement, less time wasted. And it's cool that also allows like different layers of a given organization to work together. So that is also cool. Plus, if you think about it, the story is literally already a story like that. When you just like, if you're in an agile environment, you are going to produce this thing here. It's just a matter of getting the goddamn stuff, copy and paste, and done. Like, oh yes, aha. No, what I wanted to say to show quickly that I'm not going to run. So here we are on the unit test, right? But I'm using some shear definition ultimately. So here, this is a UI test that is executable by test cloud or whatever. So what I do is the same thing, but login page, exactly the same thing. But then the only difference is, let's look at this step. You just might need to do something else. So here I just say, okay, so I just did a lot of helpers that are just coming back again and again. But ultimately, if we go to this thing, and I click on the button with email and password, because I do that quite a lot. Go to rotation. So yeah, so you know, between iOS and Android, the queries can be quite different, but ultimately, that's what you do. And then you tap on it. And that is going to be running on Test Cloud. That is going to be running on your device if you just run it locally. That's all good. So you can use exactly the same definition, find it to just different steps. That's all. Voilà. I hope you appreciated it. It's not like the sexiest kind of topic, but for me it is very, 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 very important. It's a good thing to spread, like a good development practices. Yeah, cool. I'm glad you hopefully enjoyed it.
Ben, can you share any of your code and?
So I've got like an old version of this thing that I probably need to update because I didn't touch it for a long time. Usually, if you go to my, I've got Xamariner's GitHub. We've got like most of the stuff that demos that I actually produce from scratch. PY is going to be good. I didn't start on it, but that's going to ultimately, if that works, to run or should I get produce Flutter, but from Xamarin Form. So Xamarin Form will kind of compile to Flutter that is not Flutter, this Xamarin Form, and run in the browser. Why not?
Why not?
But yes, I've got like stuff. So that is just like a, that's if you're interested in figuring out how monogames works. That's very, very simple. I've got like a library that is kind of useful and relatively popular, which is called I don't know where it is, somewhere. That allows you to easily use app config files from Xamarin Form application, because well, sometimes you don't necessarily want to get your settings from a server. But still, I just will find 5 minutes sometimes to port it to .NET Standard. So like I stop having that. Hey, you should just turn it to .NET Standard, which I will. Just need 5 minutes. That's all. Excellent. Beer. Beer.
Beer.
Yeah. I'm thirsty, like there's no tomorrow. Talking is great, but beer is better. It's friendly.
Thanks again, Ben.
Yeah, well, everybody stay posted for the next meetup. Monty will be presenting kind of the sequel to what Ben talked about, writing UI tests.
I don't have